Before we jump in, a note on our content. This story contains depictions of violence that some people may find disturbing, even for our horror mania community. Her name is Katherine Knight. A real piece of work this psychopath is. Katherine was an experienced slaughterhouse worker in Australia. She was born in Sydney, 1955, a twin and one of 8 children. Barely literate and quite the violent bully, by the age of 16, Katherine began working full-time as a slaughterhouse worker along with her father, brother, and twin sister. About a year into the work, she met and moved in with a David Kellett, a 22-year-old truck driver. They married in 1974. Although a happy occasion during the day, by night it was marred when the bride became quite disappointed with the groom's sexual performance, or lack of. So she decided to nearly strangle her husband to his death. He survived. The next 2 years through all of the abuse, including David going to work with an imprint of an iron burned on the side of his face. Much of his clothes were burned during her many stints. David shared that one night he woke up with Katherine straddling his chest, holding a knife to his throat. Still, the truck driver stayed in the marriage, and in 76, he was able to witness the birth of his daughter, Melissa. His daughter brought him light and hope, even in the midst of this dark and unpleasant marriage. Melissa was about 2 months old when David left Katherine for another woman. In retaliation, Katherine placed infant Melissa on a railway track just a few minutes before the train was scheduled to pass. A local discovered the baby, and she was saved with not a scratch. As well as Katherine. They went home, as well as Katherine, with no repercussions. Soon after, Kath went on a rampage, which included disfiguring a teenage girl's face with a butcher knife. Then, during a standoff, she held a young boy hostage. She ended up being placed in a psychiatric hospital, only to be released a few weeks later. David was there and trying to save the marriage, which was doomed. Medication and therapy was useless when it comes to Katherine Knight. She became more violent. David stayed, and in 1980 they had a second daughter, Natasha. Now, you would think David would just leave, but he stayed for his daughters, until one day he returned home from one of his jobs to find the house completely empty. Just his belongings and no sign of Katherine, Melissa, and Natasha. It was in 1986 when she met Dave Saunders. About a year together, they welcomed baby Sarah. During that time, she left the slaughterhouse claiming a back injury. With the significant compensation package and David's help, Katherine was able to purchase a rundown house in the least desired neighborhood. That did not matter, nor did her back injury. Katherine was proudly repairing her home and even had a knack for decorating. Well, her taste might be unconventional. It included hanging rusted animal traps, weapons, including a scythe. The one thing that did not change was her abusive ways. Dave experienced his clothes being cut up, burned iron mark to the face, stabbed with a scissor, even beat unconscious with a frying pan to the head. But the finishing of the marriage was when Katherine took one of Dave's dogs and made sure he was watching while she killed it by cutting its throat. Soon after he left, Katherine decided to try an overdose on sleeping pills, which landed her in the psychiatric hospital again. She was released and was actually able to obtain an order of violent protection, which kept Dave away from Katherine and the girls. By 1990, she met her new man, John Chillington. She used to beat the shit out of this guy too. Did he leave? No. Why, you ask? Because about 9 months later, she gave birth to their son, Eric. It wasn't long until Katherine left John. It was in 1994 when she met her final partner, John Price, known as Pricey. John was a well-liked man. Even his ex-wife, with whom he had 4 children with, spoke of him in highly glowing terms. After being together for some time, Kath left her bizarre shack and moved right in with Pricey. He was definitely more put together with a more tasteful and well-built bungalow. Her moving in was a bit shocking for some folks because they've had quite a few public fallouts, which included all of her fighting. And as we know, this is typical behavior of Katherine. However, definitely out of character for Pricey. Pricey shared a story with a coworker that one time he just refused to marry Kath, and she kept pressuring him and fought with him. He continued to say no, and the consequence Pricey endured was Kath presenting a videotape to his employer depicting items that could have been stolen from the workplace. Although some of these items could have come from the trash, the employer just did not want anything to do with this and no part of it. And after 17 years on the job, Pricey was fired. If things could not get worse, Pricey, unable to read or write, was having a very difficult time finding employment. And Pricey left her for that, but only for a few months. They wound up back together. By New Year's 2000, of course, things did not change or get any better for Pricey. He began to share his concerns with coworkers and even his boss. One morning, they had a huge fight, and Pricey ran out of the house because Katherine grabbed a knife and chased him. Towards the end of February 2000, Pricey went to the local court for help as he feared for his life and cannot go back home. His boss offered him a place of refuge, but Pricey declined. It was later that day, it's actually a home video of Katherine holding her grandbaby and saying, "I love all of my grandchildren, and I hope to see them again." She later took the family out to a local Chinese restaurant. Her daughter, Natasha, 20 at that time, asked her in the car on the way home if she was okay. This performance behavior was just out of the ordinary and just not Katherine. Natasha's last words to Katherine were, "I hope you are not going to kill Pricey and yourself." Through forensic evidence gathered at the home, we know the following. Kath donned a black negligee from a local charity shop and had sex with Pricey. She also was wearing the negligee as she began to stab Pricey. He managed to make it outside the front door, but was dragged back in where he was stabbed continuously. The coroner determined there was approximately 37 stab wounds, which destroyed every organ in his body. She then skinned, beheaded, and carved up Pricey. Since Pricey did not show up to work that following day, the authorities were called. They had forced their way into the home. Opening the door, they first see Pricey skinned, hanging near the doorway, his decapitated skinless corpse lying in the middle of the living room. His head was actually in a pot simmering on the stove. This maniac, she set up the dining room table for a feast of 2. There were potatoes, pumpkin, vegetables, and generous portions of the cooked corpse. Place cards were beside each setting with the names of Pricey's children, along with baseless allegations of Pricey to them. Katherine lay there in the bed, half comatose from a mild overdose. She became first female in Australia sentenced to life without parole in October 2001.